Greetings and welcome to the Halloween edition of the Sliders Review. And I'm here today to talk to you about how Brenda Bates is a very underrated slasher. So Brenda was the killer in the 1998 urban legend movie. And so I never even knew her last name was Bates because it was never addressed in the movie. But of course, Norma Bates is like very famous, and Norman Bates and stuff from Bates Motel. So they wanted to play like tongue in cheek with that last name and everything. And I'm very shocked and surprised whenever you hear people talk about like great slashers and like slasher movies and stuff. You never hear nobody bring up Brenda. But Brenda is very underrated in my opinion. I feel like she is like, should be up there with the top. You know what I'm saying? Like she's really good because, but I feel like sometimes she's underrated or like not even thought of because of like the following reasons. So like Urban Legends, all three movies bombed at the box office, even though the first one is really good and the second one is really fun. But it was during that craze of Scream coming out and everybody trying to be like Scream. And a lot of people felt like a killer killing people based on urban legends was really silly. But this was like a really fun movie. And it has gained a resurgence after all these years. So because it bombed, a lot of people don't really consider it like a great like Scream or Friday the 13th or like the Halloween movies. Another reason could just be because, a lot of people have probably just never seen this movie and stuff. I mean, it did come back out in 1998. The sequel came out in like 2000, and I forget when the third movie like came out. And, the last reason could be because like she's female and everything. If you was to ever ask somebody who's your favorite female slasher, which normally there aren't that many, but if you was to ever ask somebody, they'll probably say Mrs. Voorhees from the Friday the 13th movie, or probably Carrie. But when you think about Mrs. Voorhees and everything, her and Brenda share some similarities, and also they kind of don't. They both want revenge. Mrs. Voorhees wants revenge on the camp counselors that let her son drown. And Brenda wants revenge on the two girls that caused her fiance to die in a car crash. Both killers are rarely seen on screen. Mrs. Voorhees doesn't show up until the climax of the movie when the big reveal happens. And then Brenda is just sparingly throughout the movie, so you don't really consider her a threat. And it's quite sad because when you do think of slashers and Halloween type movies, or slasher movies, whatever you want to call them, the killers are mostly portrayed by men. And a lot of horror movie fans, they love the big bulky 1980s 70s looking killers like Mike Myers, Jason and stuff. That's who some of their favorites are. And even if you ask who's your favorite Ghostface from Scream, most people will probably say Billy Loomis or Stu. They never really think about any of the other ones because some of the other ones weren't really that good. Jill was pretty good, but only when she got revealed to be the killer and stuff. But some of the other ones kind of fall flat and generic and stuff. And of course, there's Ben Willis, and not too many people think about him either. And then there, of course, is Brenda. And not a lot of people think of Brenda. But here are the reasons why I feel like she's so underrated and why she's actually a whole lot better at being a slasher than most people give her credit for. She is all about that revenge. So when she was in high school, her boyfriend proposed to her and he was the love of her life. But then he got into a very bad car accident and died because Natalie and this other girl was pulling a prank. They decided to pull an urban legend where, like, the high beam gang initiation. And so, like, basically when you pass a car, and you turn your car lights off, if they blink their lights at you, you spin around and you chase after them. This happened, and he veered off off the road and got into a car wreck, and then he died. So, like, she's been furious ever since and heartbroken and stuff. And for a whole year, she planned her revenge. And this girl, I mean, when I say she planned her revenge, she planned her revenge. So, like, she basically found out all she could find out about the two girls and where they was gonna go to college. So with the one girl whose name I forgot, who dies in the very beginning, opening kill of the movie, like, she pulled an urban legend, the one where, like, there's a person in the back seat of your car and you don't know it as you drive off. Now, this is one of the scariest things ever, and the majority of 99% of people in the world never check the back seat. So here she is with an axe in hand, and boom, just completely chopped that girl up and stuff. And, like, after she got done with her, she went to Natalie. Now, the different thing about Natalie is that Brenda was very clever. After finding out what school Natalie went to and stuff, she befriended her. And not only did she befriend her, but she became Natalie's best friend. Natalie had no idea that this girl was the fiance of the guy that they had accidentally killed. Now, Natalie was just the passenger. The other girl who got axed, she was the driver, and it was her idea and everything. But Natalie did not stop her. And so she's furious and really wants revenge on Natalie to the point of, like, befriending her and messing with her head. And that's what she does Natalie's freshman year of school. Now, I don't think the other girl went to the same college, because the dean told Natalie if he would have known about her criminal past, he would have never accepted her. But she had already got accepted and it flew over his head. So either the other girl got accepted and he didn't know about her, or she went to a different college, which I think she probably went to, like, a different college. And so, like, her and Nat are like besties, and you will never suspect Brenda at all because Brenda is so sweet and nice. When you look at Brenda, she's just adorable with her curly hair and her big eyes and everything. And you just never really suspect she is a threat. Throughout this entire movie, you literally have no idea who the killer is, and it could be anybody. But this person is taking out all of Natalie's friends and a couple of other people. I will say the odd part is, like, when Brenda kind of goes after random people and stuff. Like, at first, she goes after Natalie's roommate. And this is, of course, to freak Natalie out, to show that, hey, I can sneak into your room at any time I want. And I can do it when you're asleep and have no idea I'm there. And she literally murdered the roommate in, like, the room when Natalie was asleep and listening to music on the headphones and stuff. And so that kill kind of makes sense, even though the roommate was never Natalie's friend, but it's just a mess with her. Then there is the dean. The dean doesn't make no sense whatsoever. So I don't understand why she killed him. And as for Westler, and like, I don't really get why she killed him too. Unless she didn't want people to think, okay, he might be the killer. So now that he's dead, Nally now knows that the killer is still out there. Okay, so he makes sense too. It's just the dean that doesn't make no sense. And so she starts going after Natalie friends. And of course, if you go after somebody's friends and, that's your like life support right there, especially when you're in college. So now she's starting to feel a little alone. And not only that, but she doesn't know if one of her friends could be the killer or not. And so, like, the thing about Brenda, like I said before, Brenda is extremely like kind and nice. And she is like, Natalie's ride or die. She will always have like her back. So, like, having that, like, sense of thought in everything, it makes you not think that Brenda could be like a bad person. Plus, to play with the audience head, you never really see Brenda in the movie that much because Natalie is the main character. Jared Leto, Paul is like the second biggest like character in the movie, and everybody else is supporting cast. So the friends are like supporting cast, and the friend group kind of bops in and out just like Brenda. So you don't know if one of them could be it. Plus, one by one, all of the friends start getting attacked and everything. And so, like, then they try to like spin it on Paul. Now, the only real time you ever stop to think Brenda might be like, a bad person is towards the third act when she gets jealous that Paul likes Natalie and Brenda has a crush on Paul. But you kind of suspect something, but not really. But then they try to throw you for a loop and make you pretend that Paul could be the killer and he could also not be the killer, because they try to pin a lot of stuff on him, like the professor's dead body in Paul's car. Only for Paul to look completely surprised, like he has no idea what's going on. Only for Brenda and Natalie to get like completely scared and take off running in the woods, trying to make it back to campus. To have Paul chase behind them, and they're all worried now. But then Brenda slips and falls, and she's off screen, so you don't know what's going on with her as Paul is behind shouting at them. Then you hear Brenda scream. And so Natalie makes her way back to campus, and of course, because the third act had to be rushed, you have Natalie ending up in like the killer's lair. And then you see Brenda tied to the bed, and so you think, okay, Paul must have like grabbed her, or the killer must have grabbed her and tied her to a bed. If she's tied to a bed, then she must be totally okay. But then what you don't notice is that like Brenda's wearing like different clothes, I believe, after the chase and now laying in the bed. And then this is when she wakes up and she sucker punches Natalie. Then she gives her big monologue about why she's doing what she's doing and why, the motive and everything. And she tells her straight, and not only that, but like the actress, Rebecca Gayheart, does a phenomenal scene letting out her crazy side. The eyes get bigger. She gets like sassy and kind of ghetto with her. Like in the audio commentary, I think it's Michael Rosenbaum and some other people, they were just like laughing because she was getting like all ghetto, talking about, lucky for you, Miss Thing, I have a visual and everything. And it's just, she goes for it in the performance and everything. She is truly demented, twisted, and disturbed in the head. And so she basically just tells Natalie, like what I told you, about her boyfriend and everything. And like how she's devastated, how she's heartbroken, and like, how she's been trying to pin all this on Natalie because a lot of the people believe Natalie could be like crazy making this stuff up, or she could probably be the killer and everything. Then, like, what also makes her great is she's just full on psychotic at this point. And, they try to give you a sympathetic reason as to why she's doing what she's doing. She just wants good old fashioned revenge. Her boyfriend was completely innocent. They was gonna get married. He didn't have that much money for a ring, so he put down like a down payment. And then he ended up dying in that car accident. And that was the love of her life, and they was about to graduate high school together and stuff. But then it's like, doing like the climax and everything, she gets shot, she falls out of a window, and there's several stories up, and then she hits the pavement and she survives, of all things. Then, not only that, but she reappears at the end, in the back of the car seat with Paul and Natalie, with an axe in hand, trying to kill them the same way she killed the first girl in the beginning of the movie. But the whole, there's a person in the back seat thing, a nice little callback. She's struggling. She really wants like Natalie and stuff, but he hits the brakes. She doesn't have a seatbelt on. She goes flying out the windshield, and then she hits, and they go over. She goes over the bridge and into the water. And then the craziest thing happened. She survives and everything. And just like most killers back in the day, like Jason and that of Mike Myers, she survived and stuff. And so, like, with Mike Myers, everybody's all like, oh, he never dies. Brenda never dies and everything. And so, knowing she's on the lam and everybody's looking for her, like the police and stuff, she changes her identity. She changes her hair, makes it straight. She dyes it darker. She still looks the same, but at first glance, you wouldn't recognize it's really her. And she's going to a completely different college because now she's just going to leave Natalie alone for now, because trying to get at her will be too obvious and everything. And I guess she's going to live a normal life going to college and everything, because she's already killed the girl who killed her boyfriend who was driving the car. Natalie was just like the passenger, so I guess she is all like, all right, I guess I can give you a pass and stuff like that. But the fact that she arranged all this for a whole year, like, she's calculated, she's very smart. She is very strong to lift a grown man's body and hang him. That chase sequence with Sasha is one of the most frightening things in a slasher movie. That was a great chase scene and everything. And how she killed like Michael Rosenbaum's character was just like genius and everything. And and I like how demented she is, and I also like how smart she is, and that's something she's very unappreciated as like a slasher. But then it gets even more interesting than that. In the sequel, which has a completely different cast and a completely different college, she shows up in the end credits. Either she's pretending to be like a nurse at a mental ward, or since she left Natalie alone, she went to go live her life and got like her medical degree, and she became a nurse at a mental place. And there she confronts the killer from the second movie and tell him we need to talk, with a very sadistic look, indicating that maybe, just maybe, she's going to team up with him so they can both take on their final girls. But the third movie went in a completely supernatural way, and we never got it, but they want to make a reboot now and everything. So yes, I truly have a lot of love for Brenda when it comes to slashers. She's one of my favorite, and she's very unappreciated. I don't understand why people love Jason and like Michael so much. And it's like, why? Is it because they're big and bulky and they never die and they just go around killing people left and right? And it's like there are other slashers that are just as maniacal, just as like devious, just as smart, and just as vengeful as any other slasher from back in the day and everything. Like, seriously, to plan everything out that Natalie did, she really put some thought and some effort into that crap. And, like, even to the point of finding out that there was a huge massacre at that college many decades ago and tried to use that against Natalie and everything. She ruined the life of, like, Paul when it came to his journalism stuff. She ruined the lives of a bunch of innocent people who had nothing coming to them, all because she wanted revenge on one girl, and this one girl just happened to be friends with them and stuff. And, to me, she's on par with Billy Loomis and everything. He wanted revenge for his dad leaving. Also, he was just kind of crazy about like slasher and Halloween movies. But Brenda, she took the time and effort to learn about urban legends. After that urban legend killed her fiance, she spent the whole year studying urban legends and using the most effective ones to kill people and everything. Because she knew she wasn't like, even though she's strong, she ain't that strong. You know what I'm saying? So she had to be very clever in that sense. She was clever enough to turn people against Natalie, to make people think Natalie's crazy, to make people think that Natalie's making this stuff up, to really traumatize Natalie and everything. Because Natalie was just 18, probably going on 19 and stuff like that. And, it's just a real shame that people don't think about her as one of the greats of, like, slasher movies and stuff. Because she was really that good of, like, a killer. Now, wasn't that spooky? Alright, well, I shall talk to y'all later. Bye.